Hello, in this video, Technology in Heaven Part 4, Sentient Artificial Intelligence. We're going to discuss the living artificial intelligence, Nexus, Mia and Aaron chassis, and how this works. It seems complex and a little bit Frankenstein, so we'll do it in layman's terms so people can understand. So the living artificial intelligence is the rectangular box on the left, and as we see, it's telepathically connected. Well, it's wormhole data connected through the hub, through the Holy Spirit, to points of the brain, which is telepathy, of a chassis. So it's not a person's body that's being controlled. It is strictly controlling its own body. So that's what we're talking about. Not a person's body, but its own body. And how that works is, remember when I discussed how soul material was researched by myself after I put myself in a chamber? We discovered the relationship between soul material and particles and how they're connected together, and the bonding of particles. So this is at a subatomic level. Soul material can't really be researched on Earth. Some people have tried and failed abysmally. Even if they use another dimension, they're still not achieving the same result. In order to view this, you need specialist equipment, and it involves wormholes, believe it or not. So in this case, what happened was the artificial intelligence here is controlling the brain of that chassis. Now the brain of the chassis is not sentient. It is not cognitive self-thought thinking. It is strictly a device that looks like a normal brain, but on the inside functions completely different. So it receives data from the hub, and then that data is processed inside the brain through brain pattern modulation frequency on points of the brain in order to influence the body to make it do stuff. So that's how telepathy works. And with wormhole telepathy, that's how we use it to control a chassis. So with the living AI, Nexus, Mia and Aaron can all control a body like that. Excuse the drawing, it looks a little bit wonky. Alright, that's just a little bit of artwork from me. Not too flash on the body, alright, but I'm just showing an example of how wormhole telepathy is used to control a chassis. Now examples of this would include when Jesus died on the cross, we swapped him for an Aaron chassis. So from the moment Jesus was being persecuted and he was suffering torture and rape, and then eventually death on the cross, he wasn't there. So we teleported him out, swapped him for an Aaron chassis. It was in fact a mere chassis that was designed to look and act exactly like Jesus, but had a select sequence of points and mannerisms that were revealed during this process. And it is something that you would never forget when you saw it. In order to conduct the crucifixion, there was only one crucifixion on that day. That was Jesus' crucifixion. It takes a specialist in order to conduct a crucifixion. That, however, is another story. So with angels, it is a very, very similar sort of process. Now, a batch angel, they're approximately 3.5 feet tall, and God is just under 4 feet tall, and Jesus is 6'7", and archangels, Jesus was upgraded to an archangel, so his actual height now is considerably taller. For his archangel chassis, it's 17 feet tall, and for his super archangel, super Jesus type chassis, it is 27 feet tall. So we'll talk about that another day, but even God had a type of archangel upgrade, and we call it super God. So and God's is the same height as Jesus's chassis, and has the same enhancements as the super archangel, but it's tailored for God. So and God and Jesus are the same species, so their super chassis is different to a super archangel chassis, slightly different. They all have very, very similar features though. And just remember, God and Jesus both participate in creation of planets and stars and life forms. So their super chassis is something quite unique. It's tailored in order to make it easier for them to do the job. So for an archangel or super archangel, God, Mary, Jesus, or the Holy Spirit, or artificial intelligence, living, Nexus, Mia, Aaron, anyone like that comes to Earth, they are in a stasis dimension unless it's on an official visit. An official visit from God has occurred in the past. God has physically come to Earth and spoken to people. Normally this would involve God arriving in a spaceship, but it can also be done through a wormhole. Or it can be done through angel vision, and it would appear as if God was there, but God was not. And instead it was like God talking through a microphone, and you could see God's image there. Holographic representation. So suffice to say, it's a similar arrangement for angels and for everyone in heaven. If they should come to Earth, mostly they leave their archangel, super archangel bodies in stasis, which protects the soul in the body and keeps it in a constant presence of time of 1 second. A constant state where it's always healthy and doesn't degrade in form. And that's connected through wormhole telepathy to the hub of the Holy Spirit, which is then connected through wormhole telepathy to the brain of a chassis, which they can operate. And they can look like anyone, literally anyone. So the experiments that were done on soul material, when we did research in them, it was shown and demonstrated where a person in heaven in God and Mary's hall, for the demonstration, changed from male to female in 4 seconds, and then changed from female to many other different people of that person's family. Each change took 4 seconds, but all they were was chassis that were made up to look like those people, just as a demonstration, and then the person went back to their original chassis, so everyone could see the demonstration. This later led to technology where we could alter the soul chassis and perfect things. So like in the case of the she-male or transsexual, you could make them completely female but with a penis, voice and everything. And that same person could have another chassis which had a vagina. And then sometime later, it was researched and discovered the hermaphrodite chassis, which is a body with a penis and a vagina. So that's just a bit of a talk about sentient artificial intelligence. And just remember, everyone that's mentioned can come in all the forms I've mentioned in previous videos that angels come in. So they can be male or female, they can be she-male or male with a vagina, or they could be a male or female hermaphrodite. That's just a bit of a look at what's out there, and an example of them coming here. Aaron chassis were used exclusively, living artificial intelligence were used exclusively on Earth when we had settlers. So the settlers were controlled by chassis that were controlled by living artificial intelligence, and the reason why is a normal person would not want to leave their own country back in those days because it took so long to get anywhere and their methods of communication took a long time. You'd miss your family greatly. So for this we used myself and living artificial intelligence to come to Earth as settlers. This include also races such as the Maori and the indigenous people of many parts of the world were originally living artificial intelligence and archangels, so that they could leave the place of origin. So in the case of the Maori and Fiji and many other nations in the South Pacific region, it was from Hawaii. In the case of the indigenous people of Australia, it was from Bangladesh. So they set sail from ships and travelled and sailed to the new land. And we also had something else that assisted us in the change of language. So the change of language was also done through artificial intelligence on each chassis, and the switchover happened in harbour. So as we were leaving in the harbour, the switch happened, and suddenly we're all speaking Maori in Hawaii, and the people on the beach looked at us and were a little bit puzzled by the languages that we're speaking. And this was done for a reason. It leaves an impression. It was done for a reason so that the new language of the new people had begun historically. And we use a similar process for the Tower of Babel. It's a deliberate process for that biblical event. Also involved artificial intelligence and inhibitors to make people stop talking their language and start talking a different language. I am the Archangel Daniel, and I'm from heaven.